What up, everybody? This is the Ultimate Patriots Dr. Football Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dennis Tien, recording remote tonight from my real live medical office in Dedham, Massachusetts. This is the place to be for 1 hour commercial-free on the New England Patriots, breaking everything down. We got so much to talk about in Foxborough. We got so much to talk about around the league. Sean McDermott out, huge surprise. Huge win for the Pats on Sunday. 4 awesome games this weekend. We are going to get to it all. Joining me as always, the CEO of Hedge Better, Justin Fine. Justin, my man, what is the good word this evening?
A lot of good words this evening, man. You know, I think we're all just super happy at this point to be back. You know what I mean? You know, we've been talking about it the last few weeks. It really does feel like a blast from the past. Patriots back in the AFC title game. You know, it almost feels like we never left. Like this is what we were used to for so long. You know, you wake up in week 1 of the NFL season and you could almost, you know, bet that you'd be playing in Championship Sunday. And we're back. And it was, you know, a long little stretch, or what seemed like a long little stretch for us. But here we are. I don't think anybody thought coming into this year that we would be back here quite this soon, but we are.
We are. And, you know, it really, was it a long stretch? I guess it was a rough stretch. I don't know if I'd say it was a long stretch when you look at what some of the other franchises in this league have gone through. And the Dolphins haven't won a playoff game in 25 years. The Jets, the Browns, the Bills can't get out of the AFC. But it's amazing that they're back here this soon. I don't know if this is a one and done thing or if this is going to be the start of a new dynasty. I mean, I think conventional wisdom would say the latter, because we think we got the quarterback, we got a great coach, we got a program in place, but you never know. And that's actually what I wanted to start it off with, Justin, which is like, look, the Patriots have to make the most of this chance that they have down to the Final Four. It's very, very rare for this to happen in most NFL cities. You have to go out, make the most of this opportunity, and win a Super Bowl. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why you have to do that. And look no further. One of the real stories from the game Sunday, and we're going to talk about all this, you know, it was the Pats defense. It was Vrabel and McDaniel's coaching. It was Drake May. What do you think about Drake May? We're going to get to all that. But I think the biggest story coming from Sunday was the absolute meltdown of CJ Stroud and just a complete implosion. And it was just 3 years ago that his name was mentioned with the likes of Pat Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. And this guy, look where he is now. I don't even know if they should bring him back or build around him. That's how bad he was on Sunday. And you just don't know. You think you have it up. You think you're going to have a 10-year run. You never know. So the Patriots have to make the most of this chance this year and go out and win a 7th Lombardi trophy. That's what I think.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, look, I made this reference last episode, but I'll say it again this week. You know, look no further than like an organization like the Lions, who should have found themselves playing in a Super Bowl. They blew their opportunity on a Championship Sunday, and then they've regressed each year to the point where this year they didn't even make it back into the playoffs. That really just goes to show that nothing's guaranteed, no matter how good of a team you are, how good of a coach you have, right? Anything can happen year after year. You never know, will this team be able to stay healthy? Are other teams gonna make a run and kind of make the most of their opportunities? Like, a lot of things can happen in, you know, I've heard a lot of people say, and it does bother me, you know, when people keep talking about this cupcake road, you know, between the easy schedule and then, you know, Justin Herbert not having an O-line, and the Texans being beaten up, and CJ Stroud, you know, not playing a good game. And now Jarrett Stidham starting for the Broncos on Championship Sunday. And as annoying as it is, because I do think the Patriots are a good team that's playing well, they're 100% right to point out the fact that if there was ever a time to be able to capitalize, it's now, with all of these things that are breaking in your favor.
Yes, 1,000%. And even look, all of a sudden now Seattle's the Titan. Because since when they were in third place in their division a few weeks ago, and I get they're probably the best team in the NFL. I'm not scared to face Sam Darnold in a Super Bowl, and you shouldn't be either.
No.
Now, yeah, would Seattle probably be favored over the Pats? Is that defense really good? Absolutely. But there is no dominant team in the league this year. We said it, I think, for the better part of the season, and it's absolutely been validated in the way this postseason has played out. This is a wide open league. It's a wide open conference, and the opportunity is there.
The opportunity is there. And look, I think the Patriots will be dogs regardless of who they play in the Super Bowl. If they make it to the Super Bowl, right? I think the Rams and the Seahawks will both be favored over the Patriots. And honestly, probably rightfully so. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that the Patriots can't beat either of those teams. In fact, I expect them to be able to beat both of those teams. The Patriots have a very winnable and favorable road to another Lombardi trophy at this point.
If the Patriots will be dogs against either of those teams, they'll be like 3-point dogs. Yeah, I would guess. You know, and that's a game that can go either way. Totally. And personally, I don't know how you feel. I fear the Rams more than the Seahawks. I really do, mainly because of Sean McVay and Matt Stafford's been there before. And I think, look, you go back to that game in Seattle, that Rams Seattle Thursday night game a few weeks ago. They're but for a really series of really fluky plays. The Rams win that game. They're the number one seed, and they're considered the best team in the league. So, I still fear that Rams team more. I think they, by all right, could have easily been the number one seed in the NFC.
Well, yeah, exactly. I feel fear the Rams team more for one simple reason, and obviously McVay's a big part of that. But it's Matt Stafford. It's the fact that you'd be going up against another Super Bowl winning quarterback who has been there and won in that moment. Look. You're hearing a lot about the Seahawks defense. You've heard a lot about a lot of defenses in this playoffs. The Patriots defense are playing just as well as any defense in the playoffs right now, right? So if you want to talk about going up against the Seattle Seahawks in that defense, I think you can wash that out because I think the Patriots is playing on par with anybody. The difference is going to be the fact that you have a second-year quarterback playing in his first Super Bowl versus a guy who's been in the league for close to 20 years that has a Super Bowl under his belt. That's going to be the difference maker. But I'll take Drake May over Sam Darnold any day of the week.
I will 1,000% take Drake May over Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
And we'll get to May's performance in a little bit. But I do think you see already in Drake May a resiliency and an ability to handle pressure in both of these games that you just haven't seen from Sam Darnold. So look, you put Sam Darnold in the talented loser club.
Yep.
I'm not sure I'm quite there, but all that said, I am absolutely not afraid to face Sam Darnold in a Super Bowl. And I think this, as much as you could say Seattle would give the Pats fits, I think the Pats would give Sam Darnold fits on defense.
I agree completely. Yeah. And I mean, look, and I don't want to overlook, this Denver game, because I think the two of us are going to have a similar opinion on it, that this is actually going to be a tougher game than a lot of people are saying. I know after we heard about Bo Nix's injury, and myself included, my gut reaction was initially, the Patriots in the divisional round are playing for a trip to the Super Bowl, right? And a lot of people have said that. But I think they're going to have to get through a tough matchup in Denver. But if they are able to pull that off, I don't think they're going up against anything that they can't handle in Santa Clara.
1,000%. Do you want to talk about the matchup next week, or do you want to talk about CJ Stroud, and we'll save the Denver matchup for a few minutes?
Yeah. Let's talk about CJ.
All right, let's talk about, because I think that was the big story nationally the last 2 days. This was not a quarterback that was put in a tough situation and couldn't do much and had a bad game. And it was just kind of no number one receiver. Nico Collins hurt. Trent Brown a scratch before the game.
Yeah.
Not much of a running game. Didn't play his best. That's one thing. What we saw from CJ Stroud was implosion.
Yeah.
It was psychological implosion. He was rattled. He melted down. Okay, completely and totally. Some statistics. He had a 28.0 passer rating in this game. If he had just gone to the line and spiked the ball every time, his passer rating would have been 11 points higher. He had 4 interceptions. We all know that. All year long, CJ Stroud was one of the best quarterbacks in the league from a clean pocket. His PFF grade was 80 from a clean pocket all year long, one of the better ones in the NFL. It was 35 on Sunday, abysmally low. So even when he wasn't under pressure, to use the Sam Darnold term, he was seeing ghosts. And I'll tell you this, there was a point in this game, Justin, where I was legitimately worried about the Patriots, and it was when they were down 10-7 in the second quarter, and CJ Stroud threw one of the worst passes I've ever seen to Marcus Jones. And if he doesn't throw that pass, I'm pretty sure the Patriots probably lose this game.
That was, I mean, well, you just hit the nail on the head. That was the entire momentum shift in that game, right? That changed everything. And I think, we all took a big sigh of relief at that point, because it did start to feel like, oh no, the Patriots are going to let this one slip away. If the Texans offense can get rolling, we obviously know how good that defense is. It's going to be a tough uphill battle here in the elements. And then that changed everything. Who more fitting to make that play than Marcus Jones? Like somebody who's just been coming up big all year, making his presence felt. I thought it was exactly what this Patriots team needed. And I really do think it was the reason why we won that game.
It was. Because look, he came in, Stroud, and he was rattled, fine. And he threw a few picks early. If he could have pulled himself together in the second quarter of that game, I mean, there's no reason Houston still couldn't have gone and won the game. He completely fell apart. And I'll tell you this, and I think I texted you this on Sunday, I'm shocked we didn't see Davis Mills. That was a big mistake. The Texans win this game if they bring in Davis Mills at the halftime. I'm sorry. They do. They were 3-0 with Davis Mills. We talked about it in November that they were a better team potentially with Mills, and then Stroud got hot, fine. Davis Mills is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league. If they go to him at halftime, I think the Texans probably, or at least have a realistic chance to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, you texted me, you said, when do they go to Davis Mills? And my response was, well, I hope they don't, because he clearly would have been a better option than Stroud. I think it's tough. I think when if from DeMeco Ryans' perspective, you're basically at that point in the middle of the divisional round giving up on your supposed franchise quarterback and making a switch that would have been real tough to go back to. I'm not saying it wouldn't have been the right decision. It clearly would have been the right decision, but I think it was a difficult one to be made. I can understand why he maybe let CJ, tough it out and see if he could get something going in the second half, but it ultimately wound up being the wrong decision.
Yeah, it was the wrong decision. It was. If you give that team, I mean, Justin, even in the fourth quarter, the Texans were only down at one point 21-16.
Yes.
This game was there for the taking, but Stroud, he stopped turning the ball over in the second half of the game, but he still was totally flustered and rattled. And you get Davis Mills in there, I'm telling you, it would have been a very different outcome.
It would have been, one of the biggest telltale signs from CJ Stroud all game was, and I think you hit on this, but it was his attitude, right? His body language, his facial expressions, his emotions. He looked like a guy who was A, defeated, and B, didn't want to be out there.
And flustered, completely flustered.
Yes, 100%. So, it would have been different if he was bringing the energy and staying positive, and he looked like he was, trying to compete and fight his way through, but he looked like he gave up on himself, a third of the way through that game.
I 10,000% agree with that. And I think to me, that's more concerning than the fact that he went out and played a bad game. It was the way he handled playing a bad game and some adversity, to the point where, look, if I'm the Houston Texans, if I'm their general manager in leadership, and Nick Caserio, who used to be here in Foxborough, I'm legitimately questioning today if I have my franchise quarterback on the roster. Stroud was supposed to be one of the next guys, but when you look at just the whole context of that performance and the way he handled it, I mean, look, that was concerning. And let's not forget, Justin, he also did fumble the ball 5 times in Pittsburgh the week before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he did. Look, it was not a good postseason run for CJ Stroud. I mean, not good is an understatement.
Yeah, you could probably say that.
Yeah. I mean, it was absolutely awful. I will say though, as much blame as CJ Stroud deserves, I do think you got to look at the organization a little bit. And you got to say, though, they haven't done a ton to help him out and put him in a position to succeed. I mean, after his rookie year, they got rid of his offensive coordinator, who kind of, I think was part of the reason why he looked as good as he did in his rookie campaign. They haven't really put as many weapons around him as they should have. They haven't put a good offensive line in front of him. So, I do think there are reasons to point fingers at the Texans organization and say, hey, I get it. CJ didn't do anything to help himself, but you guys haven't done enough to help him either. And obviously, we talked about it. No Nico, no Trent Brown. He lost Dalton Schultz in, I believe, the first quarter. The elements are obviously tough, but with all that being said and done, you still needed to see more out of CJ Stroud than you did, and it was disappointing.
They never really replaced Tank Dell.
Right.
They never. I think Diggs was there his rookie year, if I'm not mistaken. They never really replaced him.
Well, last year, to start the season before they got hurt, he had a trio of Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell, right?
Right.
And
right.
They followed that up by drafting 2 rookies this offseason and slowly working them into the offense. And it was like, they just didn't do enough. I mean, Woody Marks has been good. But, he was kind of like a second or third string guy they brought in. The offensive line was pretty abysmal all year. So, I mean, they didn't do enough.
Yeah, I can give him some consideration for everything you just said. All fair, all reasonable. I still can't get around the meltdown.
Agreed.
That's the thing. Yes. And that's what would worry me if I was. So I don't know. Should we be making room for CJ Stroud in the Talented Losers Club? I don't know. But I mean, that's something we're going to have to look at next season.
Well, here's the one thing that has kept CJ Stroud out of the Talented Losers Club, and that's the fact that in each of his first 3 seasons in the NFL, he's won a playoff game. That's the one thing that's keeping him out of the Talented, but he's knocking on the door. Like, his application is submitted, it's being processed. And it depending on how things go next year, he might firmly be locking himself in. But I will say he's at least taken his team to the divisional round each year.
Yeah, he's at least under consideration though for the Talented
He's
Losers.
big time under consideration
after Sunday. He has to be.
Yeah, he is for sure.
Awesome. All right, let's talk a little bit about our guy Justin and Drake May. And I don't know what your thoughts on his performance. I threw something up on our Facebook page. I think we've got almost 1,000 reactions, a bunch of comments. So thanks everyone for the engagement there. But to me, what I loved about Drake May on Sunday was the same thing I liked about him against the Chargers, which is he showed resiliency. He didn't play his best game, and I wouldn't expect things to always go easy in the postseason, especially against good teams. But I feel like this guy continues to show that he is kind of unflappable out there. And look, I think we've said it every week going back to September, that Drake May every week makes 3 to 5 plays a week that are plays that maybe 1 or 2 other quarterbacks in the NFL could make. I'm not even sure of that. Throws, runs, other things. And I think the real difference in this game, as bad as he was, as bad as the fumbling was, which I'm super worried about for him, and I want to be clear about that, at the end of the day, Drake May's elite playmaking ability, and I use 2 elites consciously and willingly because it is that elite. Okay, his playmaking ability is the reason why they're winning games. This guy makes throws and plays that no one else can make.
He 100% does. But let's talk about his performance for a second, because here's the thing that I think is very important to emphasize. 2 things. First of all, Drake May threw for 3 touchdowns in the snow and rain against the Texans defense, right? That within itself is an accomplishment. You look at the Texans, their list of opponents, the quarterbacks that have faced the Texans all year. Josh Allen did not throw for 3 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes did not throw for 3 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson did not throw for 3 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Daniel Jones, none of those guys and a handful of others threw for 3 touchdowns against the Texans. So for Drake May to go out there in a game where the elements were certainly working against them and throw 3 touchdowns on that Texans defense, I think that within itself is a significant accomplishment. The other
agreed 1,000%.
And then the other thing I want to say about that is if you were looking at Drake May's stat line, okay, as far as what I blame him for, he should be 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 1 fumble. The rest of those fumbles are because his left tackle got worked by one of the best defensive edge rushers in the league. And I'm actually more concerned at this point, and I know he's hurt. I mean, look, the way the MCL tear that he had, you know, is something that would sideline a lot of people for the rest of the season. So I give Will Campbell credit for coming back and playing and toughing it out. But every time Will Campbell has gone up against somebody elite this year, pre or post injury, he's gotten worked. From Myles Garrett to Khalil Mack to now Will Anderson, he got worked. And so really only 1 fumble, and that was the fumble where Drake May scrambled and kind of dove up the middle and it got punched out by the defensive tackle. That one's on him. The other fumbles was because in his blind side, his left tackle got pushed right back and the defender got to him.
Well, let me just say, since you brought up the name, I 10,000% agree that I am way, way, way more concerned about Will Campbell than Drake May.
Yes.
Like, I'm legit worried about what we're seeing. And you just hit the nail on the head, by the way, because, you know, we had a very similar conversation after Myles Garrett had 5 sacks and we were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. It seems like when this kid goes against top competition, the results are not good. I'm really concerned about that. But Justin, you're right. I mean, Campbell got turnstile the bunch. Drake May has to learn how to take a sack and hold onto the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if he had gone and had 1 or 2 fumbles in this game, I would feel like you feel. He fumbled the ball 4 times. Okay. You can't put the ball on the ground every time you get hit.
There is a certain element. I agree that still does fall back to Drake. But you know, for me, it's tough. It's tough because, you know, you look at those plays, the way they break down, and you can say, you know, maybe you should have had better pocket presence and awareness, you know, tuck the ball and protect the ball when the pressure was on. But how many guys in those situations, we've seen the best of them, you know, in a vulnerable state, you got your arm cocked up in the air, getting ready to release it. And one of the best, you know, biggest, most athletic guys in the league comes chopping down on you with all his force. That's not easy to hang on to. You know what I mean? So
it's not, but there's something with Drake. There's something with him where yes, you're right. Like any quarterback that gets hit like that is going to cough the ball up a high percentage of the time. But for whatever reason, Drake's coughing it up more, I think, than he should. I mean, he led the league in fumbles. You know who else coughs up the ball a lot, by the way? Josh Allen. Yeah. Josh Allen coughs up the ball a ton.
Yes.
But you know, so I mean, look, can he be a franchise elite quarterback and still fumble the ball more than you'd like? Yes, he can. Look around the league, but there's something there to the way Drake, I don't know, holds the ball, plays the game. I don't know, tries to do too much. There's probably a combination of factors. It is a problem. It is a problem, and it is on to some extent, Justin. It is on Drake May.
You can't.
It's the thing I'm most worried about. I'll put it this way: I'm most worried about Drake May. He doesn't throw an interception. He didn't really throw it. I mean, he threw the Hail Mary. That doesn't count. You know, it's really that. It's the fumbling thing.
Exactly. You can't completely absolve him from it. I totally agree with that. I'm hoping. You know, I know Denver has a good defensive line. You know, I know the Rams and the Seahawks have good pass rushers. I think at this point he's faced the best pass rushers that he's going to face, and by he I mean Will Campbell, right? I think Will Anderson was probably the best pass rusher remaining in terms of who would be standing in the Patriots' way. So,
well, that's because he's the best pass rusher in the league.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, yeah. Obviously, you know him, Myles Garrett. You know, you got to put him in the top 3 at least, right?
Right.
But so. You know, I'm hoping that it gets a little better from here, but you are right to say, hey, you know, quarterbacks are going to get hit and they have to be able to hold on to the ball.
But, you know, Denver has this guy, Benito now, right? Nick Benito, who's also really good. And I don't know if you know this, but Denver is the team that led the NFL in sacks this year, not Houston. Houston was second.
Yes.
So Denver can get after the quarterback too.
They absolutely
and that's one of the reasons I think this game is going to be very, very, very competitive on Sunday, because I think Denver is going to be able to get a lot of pressure on May. And when the Patriots played the last 2 weeks in Foxborough, they had a tremendous home field advantage because the crowd was extremely loud on defense and also extremely quiet on offense.
Right.
And Drake May was able to adjust things to his liking pre-snap. Well, guess what? You now lose that advantage. And I think that is relevant for this Sunday. Now, May is not going to be able to adjust things as easily before the snap. And I'm worried about that. Because I think they struggled at home. I only see it being worse on the road.
I agree. I mean, look, that's going to be a tough game for a lot of reasons. And I'm sure we're going to get into that in a second. You know, I do think though that, you know, as much as it's been a problem, I feel like hopefully it's going to be a little bit better in Denver. Not because Denver can't get after the quarterback, but I just think the Denver pressure seems to come more from up the middle. Maybe that's just anecdotally, you know, my take of it. But I think you're going to get a lot less of, you know, guys beating you off the edge and getting to the quarterback. And I think when May gets pressure up the middle, his pocket presence and his awareness is a lot better in terms of, you know, evading.
I agree with that.
So hopefully that's a small detail, but I hope that's enough to give him a little bit more of an edge.
Yeah. And maybe, I mean, look, the Titans have the 2 beast defensive ends, right?
Yeah.
And that really exploited what is proving to be a big limitation on this roster, which is Will Campbell's inability to pass block one-on-one against top caliber defensive ends. So maybe you hope with Denver that becomes less of an issue the way they get after it versus the way Houston got after the quarterback. Let me give you a couple more quick takes on Sunday, Justin, and then let's dive into this game on Sunday because we keep hitting it around it. But a couple more quick things. Look, I'm sorry, like we've said this before, but I just would be remiss if I didn't at least say, like, Mike Vrabel is now the longest tenured coach in the AFC East. What an amazing job this guy did this year. Everything from the building the culture in summer, which we questioned at the time, to just the way that this team developed over the year. Like Mike, you know, I think they should be voting for postseason awards, not after the end of the regular season, but after the end of the postseason. I
agree completely.
And after the last 2 weeks, to me, Mike Vrabel, it has to be the coach of the year. If you're really taking the whole picture into account, I mean, this has been amazing. And give Robert Kraft, I've said it before, I hate to repeat it, but give him a ton of credit for getting rid of Gerard Mayo. I mean, Kraft is kind of taking a victory lap in the media this week. And I say to that old man, go for it. You earned it. You had the nuts to make a really tough decision last January. You deserve and earn the victory lap for this.
I mean, he does. We all know that wasn't an easy decision to make. And I think we all expected Mike Vrabel to come in and do a good job, right? I think we all had high expectations. Were they this high for anybody? I don't think so. I think he is totally leaped over all, you know, the bar that we've all set. And he's just done a fantastic job. And I mean, you see it, the players love the guy. You know, he's got away with this team that, you know, they not only embody who he was as a player, but he's bringing that old school Patriots mentality out of them. And he's just getting them to come out there and fight their damnedest every week. And, you know, while we're giving a shout out to Mike Vrabel, there's 2 position groups that I want to give a big shout out before we move on to the Denver game. You know, obviously I text you about this, the cornerbacks, right? The combination between, you know, Gonzo, playing a great game, Gonzo, you know, playing a great game in coverage, his strip of the ball, forcing a fumble, Carlton Davis, 2 interceptions, you know, Marcus Jones, the pick 6, those guys played lights out, not only in terms of coverage, but forcing turnovers as well. They were, like, without a doubt, the star group in that defense. But I also got to shout out the wide receivers in this team, because we've been saying since the beginning of the year that, you know, this team, did they do enough to surround Drake May with talent? Did Drake May have the weapons he needed to make a year two leap? We've questioned guys like Keishon Boutte and Demario Douglas and a 30-year-old Stephon Diggs coming off of an ACL. But I got to tell you, man, this wide receiver group's they look just as good as anybody right now. That Stephon Diggs catch, that Keishon Boutte catch, those are two of the best catches you're going to see in the playoffs this entire run. I'm starting to think that Keishon Boutte is a certified superstar. You know, I was looking a little bit into it the other day. When he was down in LSU, he was playing behind Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, and then he got in trouble for gambling on himself, right? Which plummeted him down the draft charts. I think he's a certified superstar. Stephon Diggs playing like the old Stephon Diggs, and guys like Pop Douglas making big plays like on that fourth down. The wide receivers are playing way above their pay grade, and they're one of the reasons why this team is looking as good as they are.
All right. I'm going to give you this. Agree and disagree.
Okay.
Agree that they have bled every drop out of this wide receiver group. Yep. And I agree with you that in the limitations of what they are, they've played amazing. I agree about that. I still think that they need to upgrade the receiver position a lot. I agree that Boutte has a pedigree. People forget why he fell. He could have easily been a top first round or second round pick if things had gone better for him in college. He didn't make a big mistake. I mean, I still don't really feel like guys really get that open. I think it has more to do with May and McDaniels and scheming. And I think they definitely still need a number one receiver, but you are right that, I mean, they have, I think, exceeded expectations. Yes, 1,000%. And they have gotten as much, I think, as they possibly could out of this collection of guys. And look how great, one name you didn't mention. Has anyone heard Pop Douglas's name in like 5 weeks? And then on a huge 4th and 1 play, he comes up and makes an awesome route,
right?
Big catch and touchdown in a key spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I agree with you that I don't want them to rest on their laurels. I would love for them to add talent going into next year. But as far as like you said, getting the most out of what they have, let's put it this way. The receiving group has not at all been a hindrance on this team and Drake May's development this year. I think they've been very, very good. I think they've all played above what we've expected. Now, again,
I personally look sometimes when they play good defenses and I say, I wish the receivers could be better. But I mean, your point is well taken. I don't disagree that they've gotten the most out of this group. I mean, this group is way better than we thought they were going to be.
They are way better. They're way better. And look, they've given me at least confidence that, look, they can go up against either of these defenses, not only the Broncos defense next week, but in the Super Bowl, and they're going to give Drake May and that offense a chance to score some points.
And Justin, credit Josh McDaniels too with that, because he schemes these guys open.
He does.
And he one of the reasons they've gotten so much from this wide receiver core is because Josh McDaniels has done a really good job of coordinating this offense. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for what we've seen from this receiver group.
Yeah. Look, he schemes them open. Drake May throws them open. He makes some throws like we've said that not too many quarterbacks in the league can make. But these guys are making the plays too. They are. Yeah.
And I mean, look, I got to say this too, since we're on Keishon Boutte, that was the catch of the year.
Yes.
That was the catch. And it was a terrific throw.
And what a time. Couldn't have been a better time.
Because Keishon Boutte was not open.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drake May put that ball in the one spot where Boutte could get it, and only Boutte could get it, and he made the play of the year.
Yep. Absolutely. On one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, Derek Stingley.
On one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just think back to that Texans game last year, May's first start, and like they were down 14-0. It was right before half.
Yeah.
And May threw that pass to Boutte.
Same play.
On the deep ball.
Yeah.
And the whole stadium was just like, holy crap. Like, you know what I mean? Like this kid can throw the ball, but that play reminded me a little of that. And then to your first point, the cornerbacks on that one, I'm in 1000% agreement. And I would just say like two things. One, Marcus Jones is a total stud. He's the kind of guy you want on your team. He does the little things. I do think sometimes he does get beat in man-to-man coverage. He's a number 3 cornerback. This guy makes plays. He's terrific on special teams. He is just a baller in every sense of the word. So I love him. We got to mention his name. Christian Gonzalez is the real deal. I'm sold. Sign him this year. He's a true number 1. You've got Milton Williams in the defensive line and Christian Gonzalez taking half of the field away.
Yep.
That is a strong foundation to a defense. And then I think you just said another name, Carlton Davis, Justin, right? A lot of Patriots fans like to crap on this guy. I don't get it. This guy is a great number 2 cornerback. Accept him for what he is. He's not Darrelle Revis. He's not a Hall of Fame cornerback. He's a damn good number 2 cornerback. And I think that signing, I'm sorry, it worked out.
It did. It worked out very well. And the one additional thing I'll say about Gonzo, I think the big fear we had about Gonzo, 2 big fears we had about Gonzo heading into this year was his durability and his physicality. And he's held up on both those ends. He's proven that he can be durable, right? He's played pretty much the entire season minus that first game.
Came back from concussion protocol this week.
Very quick. Right? In the physicality, we questioned whether he was just a good coverage corner or whether he could be physical. And he's been laying the hammer. He's made some big hits.
He has,
he's
100%.
Ripped, he's forced a couple turnovers. Like, he's proven he's not just out there to defend. He's out there to lay the hammer too.
There's no question about it. And I'm sold on this guy at this point. I mean, there's always some risk when you sign these guys to these long contracts. You could get burned by it. That's the nature of the beast. But you look at what this guy has shown, I think, over these 3 years. And I mean, I think he's as good a place as any to plant your flag. So I think that, one of the priorities this offseason, when this run is over, they have to sign this guy because he is the real deal. All right, we're going to segue. We're going to talk about this Denver game in a little more detail this week. And I want to start by saying one more thing about Sunday to use that to segue into Denver, which is the atmosphere at Gillette Stadium was electric again on Sunday. It was loud. The Texans had 4 pre-snap penalties, cost them 4 points, I might point out, because they scored a touchdown off the board because of an illegal shift, and they had to settle for a field goal. So that's 4 points, okay? 2 burn timeouts as well, a huge factor in this game. I bring this up because now in next week in Denver, the script is flipped. Now you're going to their house. And I think that is going to be a huge factor in this game because we just hit on this a second ago. I worry about this team's ability, the Patriots' ability to protect Drake May. They struggled with this, I think, big time the last 2 weeks. And now they're going into a hostile environment where communication pre-snap is going to be much, much, much harder. And I think to me, Justin, this is the core. This is the essence of this game. Because if Drake May fumbles the ball 2 or 3 times, that's how Denver wins this game.
Agreed.
And I think that, the Patriots have to protect Drake May. And I think it's going to be much harder for them to do that in Denver than it was in Gillette.
I totally agree. I mean, look, there's a lot of reasons why the Denver Broncos are going to make this a good game. And look, if the Broncos won this game, it wouldn't totally shock me either, okay? And it's for reasons like you just mentioned. You're in a hostile environment. They got a great home field advantage, right? It's a very tough place to play. They have a good offensive line, right? They can protect their quarterback. They have a great coach. It's a revenge game for a guy like Stidham. Let's not forget Sean Payton went out and specifically recruited Jared Stidham to come be the backup quarterback in Denver. He gave him 2 contracts to stay there. He obviously sees something in Stidham and he likes him. And I think Stidham's going to come out and play a much better game than maybe Patriots fans are expecting. But this Broncos team is a great team all around. They don't really have any holes. And they're going to be fired up. They're going to be ready to come out there and play. They're going to be ready to rip Drake May's head off. And
right. Well, Denver's going to be able to play the disrespect card, the card the Patriots just played the last 2 weeks,
right?
Which is a powerful motivator in these games. And I mean, they're a 6-point underdog at home.
Right.
And they were the number 1 seed in the conference. So you can't tell me that guys on that defense, aren't going to use that for motivation.
They're 100% going to use it for motivation. And I'm not going to lie, man. It scares the crap out of me. It's got Nick Foles and the Eagles written.
You
all
just stole
over
that.
it.
I was just gonna say that you stole it. Go ahead.
No,
Run with it.
but it does, right? It really does. You know,
Yep.
we thought heading into that game that, oh, you know, we're playing a backup quarterback, and it was the
Yep.
exact opposite. They gave us more than we could handle. And this
Yeah.
Denver team with this coach in that environment is so dangerous that I think they can take a Jarrett Stidham and they can beat us if we're not playing our A game.
Yes, especially if Drake May turns the ball over or fumbles the ball. I don't worry about May throwing a ton of picks. He hasn't done that all year, but I mean the fumbling thing is a real problem. And if May fumbles the ball a couple times and you give Denver a couple of short fields and they get their crowd behind them and that defense is amped and they're able to even run the ball a little, that the path is there. And I think a lot of the things that Patriots fans are saying this week about Jarrett Stidham, I heard those things 6 to 7 years ago when they played Nick Foles and he beat them, you know, and I know Nick Foles was a little more experienced. Fine. He had started a few games at that point, but I'm sorry. Like, I mean, Jarrett Stidham at times when he's gotten in there, and I watched him throw for 300 yards against the Niners a few years ago. I mean, he hasn't played in 2 years, granted. He hasn't looked that bad. I mean, there's a reason why Peyton brought him in. There's a reason why McDaniels valued him. The guy's a talented guy. For one game, can he go out there and make enough plays at home to go out and win? I mean, I think the answer is yes.
And let's not forget too, he's got that extra little oomph. It's a revenge game for him. He's going against the team that drafted and discarded him. You know what I mean? So, you can't
not only discarded him, but literally like wouldn't even give him a freaking chance, you know, to win the job.
Exactly.
Brought in Cam Newton, you know.
Exactly. So, you know, for all of those reasons, I think this is a very scary, and you know what? Absolutely hate the fact that the line on this is 5.5 because I think this is still hovering right around a pick 'em, maybe a 1 or 2 point spread in either direction. The fact that the books made this 5.5, 6 points, it allows the Broncos to play the disrespect card, like you were saying, because it feeds right into that narrative.
It feeds into the narrative. And I think that if the Patriots somehow lose this game on Sunday, this is going to be the first thing you hear from the Denver locker room after the game is the disrespect card.
100%. Yep. And you know, a coach like Sean Payton will work that angle and will do his best to get those guys fired up and prepared.
And I agreed. And I want to say one more thing about Sean Payton and Jarrett Stidham. And I don't think enough can be said. I just kind of grazed on this, but I want to say it again. Like, Sean Payton is a brilliant offensive mind, and he knows what he has in Jarrett Stidham. He is going to find a way to get enough from him to make this a game. I really believe that the Patriots are flying blind. Jarrett Stidham hasn't played in 2 years, so they have no idea at this point really what he can or can't do. Peyton knows, you know, he's got the advantage, and he's a smart, experienced coach. He's going to put Jarrett Stidham in a position to get the best out of him. I really believe that.
Well, not only is he going to do the most to get the most out of him, but I think it speaks volumes. You know, when you look at the fact that Stidham was one of the first free agents that I think Peyton brought in, you know, a year or two ago. And not only that, but he gave him a second contract, right? There's a lot of backup quarterbacks out there, journeymen, veterans, guys who can come in and be a solid backup for you. You know, you tend to see backup quarterbacks as kind of like a revolving door, I feel like, in the NFL. Yeah. The fact that he brought him in specifically and kept him there and gave him a second contract, I think that also speaks volumes to the potential that Sean Payton sees in Jarrett Stidham.
Agreed. And let me say this. I would feel so much better if it was a defensive coach like DeMeco Ryans or something. Right. But you know, when you got the guy that knows what he's doing and what he wants and how to, I mean, look what Sean Payton got out of Bo Nix. That's a great example. Look what he got out of a number of different guys. All right. So Justin, before we move to around the league, I want to say I want your score prediction. Okay. I want to say two things that I think are going in the Pats' favor. Number one is McDaniels does know Stidham a little bit. So that helps, right? So I think we have to say that too, if we're being fair. So let's throw that out there. Number two, okay. I like that when Milton Williams is out there, the Patriots can stop the run, and Kyrie's Tonga is out there. The Patriots can stop the run as good as anyone in the NFL. And I like that because I think Denver's going to have to rely on their running game this week. So I think that's one thing that makes me feel a little better about this game.
Yep, 100%. Look, this Patriots defense, like I said at the beginning, they're playing just as well as any defense remaining in the playoffs. I have a lot of confidence, and they're getting better as the season goes on and as the playoffs go on. And knock on wood, I don't want to jinx it, but they're healthy right now. So I got a lot of confidence in that defense. As far as my score prediction, look, I'm obviously not going to pick against the Patriots. I'm going to say 27-23 New England. But just let it be known that I think there are a lot of people that would be shocked if the Broncos went out there and won on Sunday. I am not one of them.
Well, Justin, I am going to shock you because I am picking the Broncos this week.
Wow. Okay.
I am Denver has been a house of horror for this franchise. 0-5 in the playoffs. I know, I'm a doctor. The altitude thing is real, right? It's a real problem. And I think Peyton will get enough out of Stidham, and I'm going to call like a 23-20 Denver win. And I think May is going to struggle to have time. I think they're going to struggle to protect Drake.
You had the guts to say it because I'm not going to lie. If you put a gun to my head, I'd probably have to pick the Broncos too. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna stick with my Patriots, but I 100% understand why you would feel that way.
Because I'm a shameless sucker homeboy. Of course, I'm going to lay the 5.5 points on my DraftKings and take the Patriots.
Right.
But I wouldn't put the mortgage on it. It's money I'm expecting almost to lose because. Exactly. Like you said, if someone was like, "Hey, I'll give you $100,000 if you pick this game, $1 million." I mean, I think I'd have to take the points.
Yeah, exactly. The only look, I already got a future that I placed back in June on the Broncos to win the AFC, so I'm kind of free rolling myself here. I'm going to bet on the Patriots. I'm going to support them, but again, I would not be shocked in the slightest if the Broncos went out and took care of business, even with
I'm with you 1,000%, man. I'm with you 1,000%. And let me just say, I did go back and just to torture myself, I did look, if you're a listener to the podcast, I brought this up a few months ago. I put $50 on the Patriots to win the Super Bowl. Yeah. I would have won $4,000 if the Patriots won the Super Bowl. I cashed that out after they lost week 1 against the Raiders. So I just had to go back this week and torture myself and go find the ticket and be like, oh, what an idiot. But it's a tough one, but not my best decision. All right, let's move to around the league because there's a lot to get into. The other 3 games. Yeah. Yes. And then the biggest story in the NFL the last 2 days, Sean McDermott and the Bills parting ways. McDermott fired after the loss. I personally hate it. I know you have something you want to say about it, so you can kick off with this one.
Well, look, I like the firing. It's not that I think McDermott's a bad coach, but I think you're approaching the time where you need a change of scenery in that Bills organization. Now, shout out to Pardon My Take. I think everybody knows that podcast at this point. This is a stat that they threw out there the other day, and I think it's a very important one. In the modern Super Bowl era, right? I believe it's 36 coaches have won a Super Bowl. And of those 36 coaches, 32 of them did it within their first 5 seasons coaching an organization. Of the 4 that took longer than 5 years, 3 of them did it by year 9. And the only one that did it past year 9 was the great Bill Cowher in the Pittsburgh Steelers. So it's not to say that it's impossible, but what it does say is that history and statistics are not on the side of the Bills winning a Super Bowl if they stick with Sean McDermott.
I was blown away by that stat, and it made me have second thoughts for the way I feel about this because I disagree completely with this decision and what you said. Sean McDermott has the best record in the NFL since 2020. The Buffalo Bills have had 6 straight 11-win seasons. Who is out there at this point to even replace him? They have a good thing going in Buffalo. I get that the odds are against them. You are right about that, but I don't blame Sean McDermott for what happened in Buffalo this year or frankly any of the last few years. To me, the culprit in Buffalo is the general manager who has drafted 2 Pro Bowl players in the 8 years since they drafted Josh Allen. He has swung and missed Brandon Beane consistently in the draft. The failure to surround Josh Allen with talent is why the Buffalo Bills cannot get to a Super Bowl. Sean McDermott is a good coach. Maybe you're right. Maybe a change of scenery would be good at this point. I guarantee you if Sean McDermott was back next year, the Bills would have won 10, 11, or 12 games and would have been right in the thick of it again. So I think moving on from him is a big gamble at a critical point in Allen's career. I would not have done it.
Well, look, all right, a couple of things to say to that. First, in terms of who could you bring in, I'll tell you a guy who'd be perfect.
I know what you're going to say.
Mike Tomlin. He'd be perfect.
All right. I thought you were going to say the other one. I had 2 names I figured you'd
No. I think Mike Tomlin would be a perfect fit for Buffalo. The other thing I'll say is, at a certain point, I asked myself, when you have who I think a lot of us widely consider to be the best player in the league, at times he is certainly the most dominant player on the field in Josh Allen. You see some of the stuff he's done. I almost look at it the other way and say that you could have the Dedham JV coaching the Bills. And if Josh Allen's your quarterback, you're going to win 10, 11, 12 games. And is it actually that Josh Allen's the reason why you've been that successful and McDermott's the reason why you haven't been able to get over the hump in the playoffs? Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but I think when you got a guy like Josh Allen, it's a fair question to raise.
Yeah. Look, we know that the quarterback matters more than the coach. Of all places in the world that know that, I would say that people from New England and Patriots fans around the globe understand that it's the quarterback more than the coach. It's a quarterback-driven league. The point is well taken. I'm not saying that McDermott is George Papa Bear Hallis or Bill Belichick. Like, I don't think he's an exceptional coach. I just think, they've got a good thing going, and I just don't see him as the problem. I think a much stronger move for the Bills would have been to fire the GM and bring back McDermott and get some better players in there. That, if you're asking me, if someone's got to pay for what's happened in Buffalo the last few years, I think it should be Brandon Beane.
I will say that I do agree with you that
he got a promotion. He got a promotion.
He did. He got a promotion. I think you're 100% correct to question where the culpability is for the GM. And I'm going to play my own devil's advocate too, because I just said how good Josh Allen is in how dominant he is. But there's been a couple interesting stats I'm not sure if you've seen that have come out in the recent days about Josh Allen. The first of which is the fact that in his career, he's 0-7 in overtime.
I know that. I saw that. That's opened my eyes.
That opened my eyes big time, right? And I think in that 7 games, he's gotten the ball. He's had at least 1 possession in 6 of the 7, right? Yep. So that to me opened my eyes a little bit. The second thing, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but if you compare Josh Allen's in the playoffs, specifically Josh Allen's wild card round stats to his divisional round stats, it is night and day. I mean, the guy is lights out in the wild card round, in extremely, extremely underwhelming in the divisional round. And you can't overlook the fact that he had 2 picks and 2 fumbles in that Denver game. So I know I just said he's the best player in the NFL, but I think there's a lot of blame that lays at his foot as well.
Justin, on that one, we agree 1,000%. And that was going to be the next thing I brought up, which is like, what point do we start looking a little bit at Josh Allen? Because he has, at some points in some of these games, made critical mistakes at critical times and missed critical throws at critical times that lost Buffalo the games. If Buffalo wins that game in Denver, Sean McDermott obviously still has a job today. And when I look at that game on Saturday in Denver, Josh Allen turned the ball over 5 times. He threw 2 of the worst interceptions I've seen. Bad throws. He fumbled the ball several times, including an egregious fumble before the half that ultimately was the difference in the game. And oh, by the way, he missed big throws. He missed, was it Kincaid or Knox, wide open that would have won the game on that last drive.
Yeah.
He threw a screen for Shakur into the dirt that would have won the game on that last drive. He missed a lot of throws. So Josh Allen is the best player in the league in my book. Yes. Okay, fine. At what point does he get more of the responsibility than he's getting?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I got a couple stats here. This isn't exactly the graphic that I was looking for, but in wild card games, he's played 7 wild card games. He's thrown for just about 2,000 yards, 16 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, scoring 31 plus points per game with a passer rating of 113.9. In the divisional rounds, his passer rating has been hovering in like the 86.7 to the mid 90s. As far as his passing yards, it's been a lot lower. The touchdowns, a lot lower. The interceptions, a lot higher. I wish I had that exact graphic I saw earlier. But again,
the point is
taken that he is not the same player in the divisional round as he is in the wild card rounds, as good as he is. So, between his shortcomings in the divisional round, between, like you said, being shortcomings as a GM, I do think McDermott is a little bit of a scapegoat. With all that being true, I still think both can be true, that there's blame to go around elsewhere, and the best thing to do might still be to move on from
to me, the only way this move makes sense for Buffalo is if you can go out and get Mike Tomlin. And I agree with you. That's the first name I thought of. And the second name I thought of was Bill Belichick. Okay.
Yeah.
But and I know we're all thinking the same thing. Right. And I let me just say, I would adore it if the Bills went to Belichick, because I've seen what he's done the last few years. And love the guy, mean it, but he's past his prime, and bringing him in, I think, would be a great thing for the Patriots, because I don't think it's going to work. I wouldn't think it's going to work, but Tomlin would be a great hire for them. But I'm sorry, if you go out and you sign the next Jeff Hafley or the next, I don't know, Brian Callahan or the next nameless up and coming guy, I don't think it was worth it. I really don't. I think they were better off rolling with McDermott.
No, I've heard people talk about Joe Brady.
Brady.
I think this is, the Bills have to be, and again, even though I think that it was probably in the long run a good move to move on from McDermott, the Bills have to be very, very careful, because I think the odds say that, if they're not careful, they could very easily wind up downgrading their head coach if they don't go about and pick the right
and person. Whoever coaches the team, Justin,
and
I'm saying this as a Patriots fan, not a Bills fan, they need to get better players. Okay, they have not restocked the cabinet. That's ultimately their biggest problem. Their failure. I mean, I'll give you a great example from Sunday. Where was Keon Coleman? You stuck your neck out, Brandon Beane, to draft Keon Coleman at the end of the first round or early second round, whatever it was. There were a lot of receivers on the board at that point. They took Keon Coleman. He can barely get on the damn field.
Healthy scratch multiple times.
Multiple times. So to me, that's the fundamental problem. I don't care who's coaching the team. Josh Allen's amazing. He's a lock for 10 or 11 wins, no matter who you put. They've ridden Josh Allen's coattails for the last 3 seasons, and with a subpar roster around him, and just fallen ass backwards into 11 wins because the division sucked and because they have Josh Allen. And now the Patriots are back. You're not going to be able to get away with that anymore, Buffalo. The quality of roster construction has to be better, or they're going to go backwards.
Totally. No, I agree 100%.
All right, couple other quick things. Let's talk quick about these other 2 games, and we're gonna wrap it up. Number 1, I know you bring this up all the time. Didn't Ben Johnson learn anything from Dan Campbell? Mm-hmm. Okay, all the fourth downs, the Bears were 6 of 12 on fourth downs this postseason. I thought that really hurt them in both games. They won the first game. They couldn't overcome it in the second game. I think Ben Johnson's a great coach. I really think he did a great job with Caleb Williams, who we're going to talk about in a second. But, this reckless, go for it all the time approach, it might look good on paper. It is not good in the real world. And the Bears got burned by it big time.
A million percent. I texted one of my buddies from college who's a big Bears fan. And, my exact words to him were, when are these new age coaches going to learn that it's okay every now and then to take a field goal? It just feels like some of these coaches, like, taking a field goal has become taboo. And it's like, in situations like this, it totally wound up biting them in the butt. Yeah. I think the Bears win those games, win that game if he had taken some of those field goal opportunities earlier in the game that they had.
I agree 1,000%, Justin, with that. 1,000%. And it's common sense. Sometimes these guys need to get back to doing the common sense thing.
Yep.
My other take on that game is if you fell asleep at like halftime of that game and you woke up on Monday morning and you put on ESPN and you watched the way that they were talking about Caleb Williams on ESPN, you would have thought Caleb Williams won that game.
Yeah.
And I love that. I mean, look, I'll eat my words on Caleb Williams. He's a very good quarterback. Yeah. He's a winner. He's not a loser. Okay. I was wrong about him a lot. All that said, he threw 3 interceptions in that game, including a critical interception in overtime that I had to watch. And I think most of America who watches ESPN, we had to be subjected to watching Dan Orlovsky on ESPN this week sanitize that and try to explain to us why that awful interception was really DJ Moore's fault, which is just, look, I don't need to be a football expert to see through that as a load of crap that it is. That was a terrible pass into double coverage. That was 100% on Caleb Williams. Okay. That's my problem with Caleb Williams. It's really not even my problem with Caleb Williams. It's my problem with the national media. They build this guy into something he isn't. And even when he throws up on his shoes, they don't want to talk about it. They're talking about the 4th down play, which was amazing. But let's not sanitize the fact that this guy threw 3 picks and kind of coughed the game away.
Yeah, he did. He totally blew that last drive. And it was almost kind of like, we've talked about Caleb Williams kind of being a little smug and cocky at times. And it was almost poetic justice because, the series of downs that preceded that, a couple of plays earlier, he had that 4th and 1 sneak, right? Where he snuck the ball and then he kind of, took a few steps forward and kind of puffed his chest and stared off into the distance like, I'm the freaking man. I just did that. What a big play. We're about to be in field goal range, right? Like I just took this game over and won it. And then he totally crapped in his shoes. You got to secure that win, buddy, before in overtime, before you're out there celebrating. I mean, that was a nice little scramble he had. Obviously, it was a nice throw he had to get them to overtime. But he celebrated a little bit too early. He got a little too cocky, and then he didn't close the job. And after that interception, I'm sorry, anybody who's a remotely a fan of football knew that the Rams were winning that game after that.
1,000%. And I wonder with Caleb Williams, I fully acknowledge he's a very good quarterback, but I will say he misses throws that should be easy for him to make. Yeah. And I wonder where the math works out where he's got this exceptional playmaking ability and it's unbelievable what he can do sometimes. And then he does so many of the fundamental little things so poorly sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, where is this all going to tease out? And are you going to be able to win consistently with this guy as your quarterback? Because it does feel like with Williams, you just never quite know what you're going to get. He does amazing things and then he will make awful, awful bad throws.
Yeah, I agree. And, you talk about a team not capitalizing in missed opportunities. This was just as good of a shot, I think, the Bears are ever going to have to go to an NFC Championship and make a Super Bowl. So they blew a prime opportunity, and I think that's going to bite them in the butt and haunt them for a while.
Absolutely it will. That was a game at home that if you're the Chicago Bears, you have to win. You have to win that game. Yeah. All right. I don't know what to say about the other game, the 49ers Seahawks game. I mean, it was a boring game.
Yep.
It was over after the opening kickoff, more or less, right? The only thing I wonder about this game is 2 things. One, are you ready to take medicine on Sam Darnold? It doesn't sound like you are from our previous conversation. Nope. You're still expecting him to fall apart.
Yep.
Is that true?
I'm still expecting Sam Darnold to fall apart. Yeah, I personally am going to take the Rams this coming weekend, and I'll tell you, if somehow the Seahawks are able to squeak past the Rams in a Super Bowl environment with all of that pressure and all that attention, Sam Darnold will crap his pants. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be waiting for it. I'm glad you've doubled down on that. I don't disagree with you, but I do not disagree with that, by the way. And then secondly, where does this loss leave Kyle Shanahan? I mean, again, okay, short of a Super Bowl, this is a guy that goes out and wins 10 to 12 games pretty much every year. Can't seem to win the big one. I fully acknowledge that they were the lesser team and decimated by injuries. I just wonder what the long-term future is for Shanahan in San Francisco now, and if there starts to be rumblings about whether it's maybe time for him to move. I mean, he's been there for what, like eight years now, I think 8 or 9 years.
At least, honestly.
No ring.
Yeah.
At some point, I think these franchises, they change just for the sake of changing. I'm not disputing Shanahan's a great coach, but I wonder where the pressure in that building on him, I wonder when it starts to ratchet up a little.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's almost similar to McDermott in terms of, you've been knocking at the door for so long. I mean, he's taken them to 2 Super Bowls. He's taken them to multiple conference championships. And, a few weeks ago, we were talking about him being a potential coach of the year candidate and how much he did with how little he had and all the setbacks that the 49ers had. There's no denying that Shanahan is a fantastic coach. In the 49ers, are well off having him as their head coach. But again, you have to wonder how many times can you fall short before a change of scenery is needed. I think the 49ers are in between a rock and a hard place with Shanahan. And part of it is because of the statistic that I brought up a few minutes ago. I think he's one of the better coaches in the NFL, and he's proven that he can get the most out of that team. But statistically, it says that you're not winning a Super Bowl with him at this point.
Yeah, that's a great point, and you can use that statistic for Shanahan. There's no doubt about it. I mean, right. I want to say that, let me be clear, I don't think they should move on from Shanahan. Yeah. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. I just wonder at what point, though, the owner get impatient, the fans get impatient, the front office gets impatient, and all of a sudden he becomes the fall guy. It is very similar to what just happened to McDermott. I think for whatever reason, Shanahan is held in higher regard than McDermott. But I think at some point, fair, unfair, right or wrong, the bullseye is going to point to him.
Yeah. I mean, look, well, he has done more than McDermott, right? He's gotten to 2 Super Bowls. He's gotten to more conference championships. But at a certain point, that just means you've been the second, the first place loser a bunch of times, right?
100%.
So it is going to get old eventually. And you have to wonder, I agree with you. I don't think they should move on from him this year. But you do have to wonder, especially with that team, another year older, another step closer to potentially having to undergo a major rebuilds. What does the future look like for him?
I agree. I think that's a great question. And it needs to be said is that, is that 49ers team even going to be a contender next year?
Right.
And it's hard to predict that because we have a whole off season ahead of us. But, a lot of those core players are aging fast. Christian McCaffrey is not going to be able to do it forever. Yeah. George Kittle just blew out his knee again. Fred
Trent Williams is on his last leg.
Trent Williams is 36 years old. I mean, there's a lot of those core players are at the end of their career. And I don't know what the future holds and if that team is really even has an open window for a Super Bowl right now. So
exactly.
Anything else you want to add, my man, before we wrap up? I think this was a great episode of the Ultimate Patriots podcast.
Yeah, it was. And, I guess the last thing I'll say is, going into this year, looking back on week 1, episode 1, whatever you want to call it, off season, I don't think any of us thought we'd be here talking about the Patriots heading into Championship Sunday. So I think just for that, we're grateful,
Totally. I mean, it's amazing. And look, saying that they need to capitalize and saying that they need to make the most of this opportunity doesn't mean they aren't playing with house money either.
For sure.
And I don't think anyone at this point will be upset if they do or should be upset if they go out and lose in there. I mean, we'll be heartbroken, of course, but big picture wise, let's face it, we're going into next year feeling really good about this franchise.
Big time.
No matter what happens on Sunday.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap it on that. Thank everyone that listened to this episode of the podcast. Have a great week, everyone. Enjoy this game on Sunday. We will absolutely be back either way to record next week and cover it with a new episode this Wednesday, every Wednesday. Stay warm. It is going to be so cold. Did you see the forecast, by the way?
What, for Denver?
For Boston, for what the weather like is going to be here the next week.
Oh, no, I haven't, but it sounds like it's not going to be good.
It's not going to be, it's going to be like really cold, and we might get a huge snowstorm Monday. So I really
Right.
wish I could like get on a plane and go to Florida like tomorrow and not come back for 2
I
weeks.
hear that.
That's not realistic when you have kids, man.
I know.
All right, well, listen, thank everyone that listened. We'll catch you next week. Have a good time and go Pats.